Welcome to my video lecture series in Game Concept and Production. This is Professor Janus Raymond Tan from the College of Computing and Engineering. For this video lecture, we will cover the topics about kinds of fun, kinds of players. Throughout this video, we will discuss kinds of fun, evolution of fun, player types, which comes first, the player or the fun. Kinds of fun. The Oxford English Dictionary defines fun as amusement, especially lively or playful. As an adjective, the word is described as amusing, entertaining, enjoyable. For fun or for the of it means not for a serious purpose. The standard definition of fun suggests some overlap with the concept of play. In fact, these two words are often mentioned together, example fun and games. However, play often refers to be the overarching term, where fun is more specific to experiencing enjoyment. For example, when defining play researcher Scott Eberly writes that fun is one of the basic elements of play. He also observes that we play because the act of play promises fun. If there were no fun in the play, we would likely not play. This suggests a relationship between the concepts of fun and play, a possible causality perhaps. Fun is a natural byproduct of play. Fun is intrinsic to play. Eberly also argues that although there are many ways to develop knowledge, self-assurance, and vigor, none of them are fun as play. Fun is really just another word for learning. Putting players in a flow state is where this elusive fun comes from. In this lesson, we will dig deeper into this concept to learn more about fun and relating that back to flow theory and other things. From the MDA framework, there are 8 kinds of fun. These are sensation. Games can engage the senses directly. Consider the audio and video eye candy of video games. The tactile feel of the wooden roads and houses in Settlers of Catan, or the physical movement in playing sports, Dance Dance Revolution, or any game on the Nintendo Wii. Fantasy. Games can provide a make-believe world that is more interesting than the real world. Example is the Legend of Zelda game. Narrative, game as drama, game as a mean to tell a story or narrative to the player. Examples, The Walking Dead and Persona 3. Challenge, some games, particularly retro arcade games, professional sports, and some highly competitive board games like Chess and Go, derive their fun largely from the thrill of competition. Even single-player games like Minesweeper or activities like mountain climbing are fun mainly from overcoming a difficult challenge. Fellowship, game as social framework, games that have social interactions as its core or as a big feature. American board games like Monopoly continue to sell many copies per year in spite of uninteresting decisions and dull mechanics. It is not the game, but the social interaction with family that people remember fondly from their childhood. Discovery. This is rare in board games, but can be found in exploration type games like Assassin's Creed. It is more commonly found in adventure and role-playing video games, particularly games in the Zelda and Metroid series. Expression. Game as self-discovery. Games that allow for self-expression from the player through gameplay. Examples includes like charades or poker, where the way that you act is at least as important as what other actions you take within the game. Dungeons and Dragons, where the character you create is largely an expression of your own personal idea, or open world and sim video games like The Sims or Grand Theft Auto or Oblivion or Fable, which are largely concerned with giving the player the tools needed to create their own custom experience. Submission, game as pastime, games that have farming or grinding as a core element. Examples, Farmville, Hyperdimension Neptunia, Disgaea. Recall that these are not all or nothing propositions. Games can contain several kinds of fun in varying quantities. Why not just create a game that has all eight kinds of fun? Wouldn't it be holy grail of games? The games that's fun for everyone? Unfortunately, no. Just because these are different kinds of fun does not mean that everyone finds all eight of these things fun at all. Not only do different games provide different combinations and relative quantities of the various kinds of fun, but different players find different combinations more or less fun than others. Some people think that chess is fun, and some are not. The fun aesthetic arises not from the game alone, but the combination of game and player. Are these eight the only kinds of fun? No, even the authors admit that the given list is incomplete. Evolution of fun. Noah Falstein, a game designer and producer in 1980, answers the evolution of fun can be explained by taking a trip back to early prehistory, when humans were at their hunter-gatherer stage. Primitive humans had to learn many skills in order to survive and reproduce. If we found it fun to learn certain skills, we would be more likely to practice them, and thus more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on our genes to the next generation. Over time, those things that made us most likely to survive ended up being the things that we find fun today. Not all primitive hunter-gatherer skills are necessarily useful today, mind you, but our genetics haven't had time to catch up with our technology yet. In short, if a caveman found it useful, you'll find it fun. Falstein proposes three kinds of fun. The physical fun, which is useful for any physical feats that allows us to fight or escape danger. The mental fun, the problem-solving part of our brain that gave us such useful things as the will and fire. And social fun, the benefits of banding together in groups for mutual survival and of course, reproduction. Discovering new types of fun. We can do this in reverse. Instead of taking that's fun and tracing it back to the reptilian parts of our brain, we can isolate skills that our hunter-gatherer ancestors might have needed to survive and then use that to figure out what we would find fun. For example, here are some activities that are often found in games. Collection. This is the gathering part of hunting and gathering, so you would expect it to be fun. And it is. Before video games became ubiquitous, the world's most popular hobby was stamp collecting. In many board games, you collect resources or tokens. Trading card game players collect cards. In the video game world, we've been collecting things since Mario first started collecting coins. Spatial reasoning. Primitive humans needed to figure out spatial relationships in order to build useful tools. For example, if you want to find a big stick to make a crude ladder or bridge, you need to be able to estimate length. If you want to stick two pieces of wood together, you need to be able to figure out how to make them fit. Many games make use of spatial relationships like Tetris. Advancement. This kind of a meta skill, the skill of learning new skills, which is obviously useful to a primitive human that needs to learn a lot of skills. We see this formalized in games all the time, from the overt points and levels to finding new items or buying new weapons that give us better stats or new capabilities. Finding shortcuts, finding novel, undiscovered ways to work around problems in ways that take less effort than normal help primitive humans to conserve their energy. In that sense, laziness can be a virtue. Ironically, in games, this often takes the form of deliberate rule breaking and cheating. Grieving, like other forms of competition, perhaps you can think of other kinds of fun. Game change over time. Play in general and games in particular help us to exercise the skills we need for adulthood. While the things we find fun require millions of years of evolution to change, the games we play can change with each generation. As such, you can tell a lot about a society's values by looking at most popular games. This gives yet one more potential starting point when designing a game. Think about what kinds of skills in adulthood in your culture. Find a link between those and the skills needed for a primitive hunter gatherer to survive. Then design a game that exercises those skills. Most successful learning games do this by integrating the learning into the game. The actions in the game either consist of using the skills that need to be learned, or the learning of a skill is a victory condition of the game. In both cases, the gameplay is aligned with the inherent fun and joy of learning, and you can end up with an educational game that is also fun. Note that this is in stark contrast to the typical edutainment title that requires rote learning as a prerequisite of play, or that separates the learning and the gameplay, which has been proven time and again to be not fun. Player types. When you're using gamification in the enterprise world, it's a good idea to understand how players like to approach playing games. There is a simple measure designed by Richard Allen Bartle, a British writer, professor, and game researcher in the massively multiplayer online game industry. The Bartle test of psychology, which breaks up the way people play games into four simple categories. These categories are the achiever, the explorer, the socializer, and the killer. It's worth noting that these categories aren't rigid. Most people display some traits in more than one category. However, most people have a dominant trait which determines their overall preference. If you know where the majority of your players fall using this tool, you can use it to inform the majority of features you will use, and then just add a small number of features that appeal to each of the other categories. Achievers find it enjoyable to gain power, level up, and generally to win the game, to the extent that an ongoing, never-ending game can be won. Achievers are all about points and status. They want to be able to show their friends how they are progressing. They like to collect badges and put them on display. This type of person who responds particularly well to incentive schemes such as air miles, where every additional mile collected is an achievement in its own right. Bartle estimates that roughly 10% of people are players of the achiever type. Chances are you will know several people of this sort. Someone who boasts he used a quicker route to get to a destination than his friend did is an achiever type. Explorers want to explore the world, build mental maps of the different areas in their heads, and generally figure out what is in their surroundings. Explorers want to see new things and discover new secrets. They're not as bothered about points or prizes. For them, discovery is the prize. Explorers are fine with repetitive tasks as long as they eventually unlock a new era of the game, or they deliver some kind of Easter egg. An Easter egg is a small bonus within the game. Sometimes it's as simple as a little joke, whereas in other cases, it might be a full extra video sequence regarding what has been accomplished. Explorers really enjoy the surprise that's possible in a game, and around 10% of players fit into this category. These are the players who will feel at walls in a game in order to access a secret passage. Their satisfaction on doing so is what makes them tick, not bragging to their friends about their discovery. But build this sort of feature into your gamification design and you'll be speaking their language. Socializers use the game as a social medium. They play for the interaction within the other players. The gameplay systems are just a convenient excuse to get together and play with friends. The vast majority of players are socializers. That's almost 80% of people who play games. Socializers experience fun in their games through their interaction with other players. Socializers are happy to collaborate in order to achieve bigger and better things than they could on their own. Games such as Farmville appeal to the socializer. For instance, socializers are happy to water someone else's farm in exchange for new crops for their own farm. For example, office workers who leave at the end of the day and remind each other to water each other's crops may be friends, or maybe just be acquaintances. Whatever the deal is, the point with socializers is that joining forces makes sense to them. Note, this is the last place you'll find fierce competition. But it doesn't mean socializers are passive milksops who lack ambition. Killers, today we call them grievers, derive their fun from ruining other players' fun. The killer denotes an ominous sounding type, but one that is nonetheless valid. Killers are similar to achievers in the way that they get a thrill from gaining points and winning status too. What sets them apart from achievers is that the killers want to see other people lose. They're highly competitive, and winning is what motivates them. They want to be the best at the game, and it should come as little surprise that the only way for that to be true is that they beat everyone else. You may expect this personality type to be common, but Bartle's research suggests that only a small number of players are killers, less than 1% to be precise. Now, which comes first, the player or the fun? If we can go back and forth between player types and kinds of fun, you may wonder if this is a classic chicken and egg problem. Is it better to start with players or fun? Consider this. As game designers, we create rules or mechanics. The rules create the play dynamics we set in motion, and those cause the aesthetic of fun in the players. The things that we create are a root cause of fun. Therefore, it is the kinds of fun that are of greatest concern to us. We do not create players. As game designers, our rules do not create new players or player types. Therefore, any list of player types is only useful to the extent that it is correlated with kinds of fun. As an example, there is a book, 21st Century Game Design by Chris Bateman and Richard Boone, that proposes player types based on Myers-Briggs personality types. The main idea of doing market research, understanding the players that you are designing for, and designing a game to fit the target market is the idea that has definite applications in game design. But the implementation has a problem. Myers-Briggs types are mapped to player types, which in turn correspond to different kinds of fun. There are two levels of abstraction here, which means a higher than normal error rate. People do not always fall neatly and precisely into 16 categories after all. A more well-tried example is that of classifying players as casual or hardcore. Now we see why this distinction may be useful to marketing suits, but not so much to game designers. What kinds of fun correspond to these players? What is casual fun or hardcore fun? This is not clear. We are told that casual gamers want experiences that are short, easy to learn, not very challenging. Yet, some so-called casual games are difficult, like Diner Dash, long, puzzle quest, or complicated, like Virtual Villagers. Instead of spending time trying to define a single casual gamer archetype, it would be more fruitful to identify the kinds of fun that help a so-called casual game to succeed and then work from there. In summary, we could say that fun is really just another word for learning. Putting players in a flow state is where this elusive fun comes from. From the MDA framework, there are 8 kinds of fun. Noah Falstein proposes 3 kinds of fun: the physical fun, mental fun, and social fun. Game changes over time. Bartle Test of Psychology by Richard Allen Bartle, which breaks the way people play games into 4 simple categories, namely the achiever, the explorer, the socializer, and the killer. That's it for now. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed this video. For inquiries, feel free to post your questions in our group chat. In our next video, we will discuss all about games and art. Don't forget to visit the links in the references section for more information about this lesson. See you in the next video.